Still, it's better than being caught with half a mouthful of croissant, as has been the case before. Right, we'll start with the low-hanging fruit, shall we? This is the new marketing campaign for the sport that was funded to the tune of £3.6 million by the Levy Board. We've talked about the Going is Good. You might not yet have seen, and it is only an initial offering, their first television and digital video offering. Here we go.
Hey girl, I have to tell you about today at the races. It was so much fun. All the girls getting ready together under one roof. We were like...
3 peas in a pod. Holly Doyle rides and she's in great form. The only danger is storming a teacup ride and a Ferris wheel. The kids loved every
second, then first. We were right at the rail. The sound when the horses came
thundering past. They were neck and neck. It was such a tight finish. You should have seen us.
We were dancing in our heels. We haven't had a sing-along like that for a long time.
Time flew, but what a day!
4 million memories made every year. The Going is Good. Search horse racing near me.
All right, suspend complete cynicism and just analyse the effectiveness of the beginning of this campaign. Right, Jonathan Harding, go for it.
I'm going to try and be positive from the outset. I'm very pleased that there's finally, after much asking and much banging on the door, a joined-up national campaign, given the whole Premier Racing and the mess around that. The fact that we actually have one now is promising.
Yeah, and the Levy Board are prepared to fund it.
There's been an investment.
$3.6 million.
The fact it's taken so long since the last one.
All right, what do you think of that?
I think they could have been a bit braver with it. I understand the impulse to sell the occasion. That's the type of people that they're trying to attract. There are horses in it, which is quite refreshing. I think occasionally sort of shy away from the actual racing, and the main draw is, you know, I understand Holly Doyle and the racing and the excitement of the day. I don't hate that at all. I'm willing to slightly reserve judgment until I see a little bit more of where they're going to take it and we get some proper kind of markers of how we're going to judge the success of it, really. But, yeah, I would say 5 out of 10.
I didn't think it was a lavish production. I'm told all the money's gone into the distribution. Eve, your thoughts?
That's the first time I've seen it.
Yes.
So if it started being distributed, you'd have thought with the algorithms I would produce, I might have had it on my...
So you haven't had it...
...digital output.
And you would be on your Instagram and your Twitter fairly regularly.
Yeah, I mean, not a huge amount, but quite a lot. And that's the first time I've seen it. So I think they need to push the distribution. I don't hate it. It doesn't really grab me, but I'm not the person they're looking at. So let's give it a chance and really try and push it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a marketing genius. So
Simon Buckeyes was on the programme a few weeks ago. The conceit, I think, is that it's not a celebrity-driven campaign like the Jermaine Genius one was that was widely derided. It's real people, real experience, except those people's voices in the advert, David, are not real people with real experience. It's real experience being acted. So if it's going to be authentic, make it authentic.
Yeah, look, I think it's harmless. Whether it's snappy enough to get new people in, I'm not sure.
To me, if you're selling experience, you've got to sell something really special. And it seems a little everyday.
Yeah.
To me, just in its...
I don't think it's bold enough.
Its pitch.
I don't think it's bold enough. I think they should be bolder somehow.
Its pitch is just a little... And maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe they're trying to promote racing as a, you know, quotidian thing for people. You know, this is something that is part of their lives rather than a big special occasion. Maybe that's the thrust.
I think it's a first, you know, it's the first take of it. I'm willing to see where they go with it, but I do see where you're coming from. There's a few things that, you know, anyone can, from the outside, point fingers and say, well, could have done with some element of betting. There's no, you know, no horse jumped over anything. Could there have been more horses? Could there have been... But actually, I think I think harmless is the right...
The bit that's lodged in my head is the little bit at the end where it says, you know, find racecourse near me and the little search engine. That's simple, but actually playing on that local thing a bit more.
Yeah, I just think all racecourses, maybe they should give away free tickets to the local people. Certain streets every day near them, because you get people in and then people will talk about it. And you get atmosphere and you create atmosphere. And you get them in, they'll spend.
Worked a bit for Newbury, hasn't it?
It's worked for Newbury.
Wasn't it your idea?
Well, I don't know. We were talking about it, and I think... I'm not a marketing guru, but I really cannot understand. If you've got an empty racecourse, like Newbury at the evenings, Kempton evenings, like you've got a great site, why not get the locals enthused.
Because then you actually have to put your hand in your pocket as a racecourse group and pay staff to staff
Yeah, but they'll
the place.
spend. If they come, they'll spend. And if you give them a good time, they'll come back.
The accountants will tell you otherwise, I reckon.
Well,
it's depressing. It's a depressing truth. But
honestly, it's got to be cheaper than a great big marketing campaign. Just put your hand in your pocket for a couple of nights, get a bit of atmosphere going. They'll tell their friends. Then you get more atmosphere going. Then people will pay.
All right. Well, that is the start of the Going is Good campaign. A few notes on that. Right. This has been here every week for the last 3 weeks, which is more than I have, to be fair. But this is the appeal, which was lost by the connections of She's Perfect to overturn the result of the Pouliches de Pouliches that was awarded on the day to Zaragana. Zaragana kept the race after, it seemed 2 days, the hearing at France Gallo. I didn't know, David, whether this was just because the lunch was longer there or whether they had more to think about. Did they make the right call?
Personally, I don't think they did. I think it's really harsh. If I had lost the race like this, I would be extremely annoyed.
Were you surprised?
No.
Did you think they would get it back on appeal?
No, because the French have too much ego, I suppose. They would never come back on their decision. I don't talk about myself, because that's why I live in the UK, obviously. Personally, I think it's unfair. There's no contact between the winner and the demoted horse. Therefore, I find it unfair.
You say the French have too much ego. Is that in jest, or is that a commentary on the way that French racing is run?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and that's a commentary on how the country is run, more generally. Yes. Now, look, let's don't do the trial of the French today.
Well, you're doing that. You're doing that quite effectively yourself. We don't need to say anything.
No, but look, it was a lost cause, you know. It was a lost cause to...
What, France or the Stewards inquiry?
Both. to go on appeal, I mean, they had to appeal. But yeah, I think it was wrapped up before they turned up. Yeah, I do find it unfair.
Okay. All right. Anything to add?
I think under French rules, she was never going to get it.
And under French rules, should she have lost it?
Yeah, under French rules, she was always going to lose it.
Okay.
Honestly, before they even had the ding-dong, I thought, oh, she's in trouble.
Yeah, it's hard lines, isn't it?
It is hard lines. I don't agree with it, but those are the French rules.
Let's talk about the BHA's more defined stance this week and plea to government to treat racing differently when it comes to proposals to harmonise taxation. So, as things stand, it's 21% remote gaming duty and 15% sports betting duty, and the idea is that there'll be some sort of harmonisation, and of course we only know that that means one thing: when the Treasury wants their coffers bolstered, the 15 goes up, or whatever. Now, horse racing is taking a very defined position, saying it needs to be treated differently. This is a skill-based pursuit, yes, but also it is something that contributes widely to society and therefore deserves some kind of break in taxation or delineation. Is there a philosophical and/or practical case for this? And are the BHA taking the correct stance, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think there's both. I think the BHA is taking the right stance. I think this is, it absolutely had to say something, and for it to put this line in the sand publicly, I think was very important, because we're looking at this, it's betting tax, but it's in the context of affordability checks and regulatory changes. It's in the context of a lack of progress on levy reform. So again, it all comes down to the basic argument of you want to regulate, you want to make these changes to the gambling industry. We're here in the crossfire. Hello, please help us, because actually we are a cultural institution, and what you do to bookmakers is understandably and unfortunately going to have a pretty big knock-on effect for racing's finances. And as for making the distinction, I don't think it takes a genius to see that they are two very different pursuits.
What bookmakers don't particularly like, of course, generally, is that distinction to be drawn between betting on horse racing and casino betting. It doesn't suit their business model for those two things to be distinguished between. So is racing playing a high-stakes game by moving themselves philosophically away from big corporation and more closely allied with people who've been banging the drum for research into gambling-related harm over the last 2 or 3 years and probably don't have much interest in the future of horse racing themselves.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and there's a sense of, is this perhaps a red herring? And actually the big issue here is you're increasing duty or harmonising duty, and it's going to impact bookmaker returns, and therefore it's just the general financial situation, as opposed to maybe getting into the finer detail of casino products and we're different. I do think it's a valid point to make because it plays into that larger theme of racing as a cultural institution. It should be, whether treated differently is one thing, but it should certainly be viewed differently when you're making those decisions.
OK. Let's talk about weighing rooms, because the BHA have come out this week and issued a backstop beyond which racecourses cannot delay in their completion of the necessary weighing room refurbishment. This is not just to make weighing rooms more comfortable places for the jockeys, but also to make sure that female jockeys have facilities that are equivalent to male jockeys and also have areas whereby their valets can operate, etc. So you'll be aware of the saga now that's been winding on for an awful long time. There is a deadline to the end of 2026, after which some sanctions may be appropriate, say the BHA, depending on which fixtures they are. But by the end of 2027, there is a final stop beyond which racecourses could then lose fixtures. The PJA are rather nonplussed by all this and say too little, too late, and really what the hell's the difference, and you haven't pulled your finger out now, so don't pretend to. Eve, what do you think?
I think the PJA have every right to be angry. I think weighing rooms are a disgrace. They were a disgrace when I was riding, back when Nelson had 2 eyes. And
they're probably worse at some of the blazers.
I mean, they were awful then, and they have not got any better, and they have got an awful lot more girls riding. And I mean, you go into any football club, however lowly in the land, they have much better facilities. And I know, or any club, any gym you go to have much better facilities. It's appalling that we are asking our athletes to work in this way.
Of any gender?
Yeah, of any gender. They should have gym facilities. They should have a hot tub. They should have an ice bath. You know, it's not asking for the world. It really isn't. And I think the racecourses are definitely dragging their feet.
It's interesting, this, isn't it? Because there's 2 issues at stake. Because you can actually fulfil the criteria that you need to fill in order to make sure that the female changing room is on a par with the male changing room and the facilities are right. But actually, they might still be inadequate. So they're 2 different things, aren't they? One is to actually get equivalence, and the second thing is to actually make them any good.
Yeah, I mean, the racecourses will say it's a pretty massive expenditure, it's quite complicated projects, etc., etc. I take that to a point, but the progress on this has been so laughable, to my mind anyway. I think it's a joke, and it plays to the first talking point we have here. You have a national campaign trying to sell British racing as this thing people should engage with, and it's forward-thinking, and young people will love it. And then you have elite athletes operating in conditions that wouldn't even pass muster decades ago. I think we want our jockeys to be elite athletes, and we've discussed them at great length today about all the virtues that they have. The least you can do as a racecourse is to provide proper facilities. It's good that the BHA has now pulled its licensing. You know, it has showed a bit of muscle and it's linked it to the licensing conditions. But I can't help but think a lot of this should have happened years ago, not now.
Anything to add?
Well, I find it disappointing that they have to be forced to do it. It's disappointing that they don't have the common sense to do it for the sake of looking after the jockeys.
Remember the mid-80s, we're talking 40 years ago, Kempton built that clubhouse building. And they put in what then, I don't even know what it looks like now inside, because I haven't walked into it, but what was then considered to be a state-of-the-art jockey's room. I don't know how many better ones there have been since, but that's 40 years ago, and you certainly don't walk into many and think, oh, this looks nice.
No, they're always dark and dingy. I mean, I haven't been in any changing rooms, female changing rooms, for a long time, but they were, hopefully they've got better than they were, because they were awful. I mean, we're lucky if you had a shower. That's
pretty appalling, isn't it?
Yeah.
what used to be called the ladies' team, women's team, girls' team. Perhaps it's a clue in itself that they could never really get to grips with what the right word was to describe the team, has been disbanded at the Shergar Cup. So now if women are coming to ride in the Shergar Cup, they will be part of geographically defined teams. Now, Hayley Turner has come out and criticised this decision. I'd be interested to know what Emma Jane Wilson thinks. She's been a big part of the women's Shergar Cup team for an awful long time. And I'm interested to know what you think about this, because it's perhaps a little more complex than people are making out.
I don't know. I mean, it's such a tricky one, isn't it? You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I think as long as they have enough female jockeys represented throughout the teams, then you're all right. But the danger is you don't have a female team, and you also don't have... You only have one or two. So you are then completely lowering the opportunities. So, as I say, I think it's quite a tricky one.
Yeah, so the received wisdom, Jonathan, was that it was sexist to have a female team because you were drawing distinctions between the female jockeys and the male jockeys, and actually they should all be assimilated as they are in the course of the sport. Your view?
I mean, it's not something I have a too strong opinion on, because it's, you know, I just think I like the idea of it being geographically split more logically. It was quite strange having sort of teams based on geography and then a ladies team, but I can also see that the ladies team was closely followed and it had an appeal, and it was the silks, and like I can understand that. But I do think if we're trying to sell the sport as an equal footing, provided there are still sufficient female jockeys, you know, an even split ideally, then I can't see why this would be the wrong step myself.
I was with it, and then I read Hayley's article, and I started to come around to her view, because it struck me that, having covered the Shergar Cup for a number of years, the power of that entity, of the female team, was quite significant. And the kind of solidarity between international women who were really pioneers in their sport in their various countries was quite a powerful concept, and was actually raising the awareness of what women could do against men. And invariably, they'd win the thing.
Yeah.
You know, with entirely randomly selected horses.
Yeah,
so it was actually ramming home the message every year: women can do this job just as well as blokes can. And
I think it's done a lot of good.
Yeah.
For the women jockeys, really has. So I absolutely I agree. Having read Hayley's article, I thought I don't know.
I see both sides of it, but I think on balance it was a force for good rather than a force for antediluvian thinking.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Anyway. Prize money in France dropped by 20%. How big a deal is this going to make to you? How damaging is it going to be for the sport in France as a whole, which is heavily built on its superior prize money to Britain and Ireland?
Yeah, I think, look, it will have an impact, not necessarily on me, because I don't entirely rely on France. It will have an impact on the. I think the Group 1 races are protected. That's my understanding. I think the.
So you'll be fine.
I think the owners' premiums are going to go down. It's the listed races, Group 3s, Group 2s, that are going down, and then the lesser races are being protected. So. Look, I think the French have been relying on their super prize money for a long time without doing a great deal about it. I'm going to be controversial, but there's nothing more boring than the races in France. Unless you go on a big day, you have to make your own entertainment. You know, you'd struggle to find an edible sandwich on the racecourse or anything like that. There's no entertainment whatsoever.
And there's me thinking that you can get a very nice edible sandwich race, or have only been to the good race days?
I think you only go to the good races.
I think it's the high days and holidays.
To be fair, I think you have more fun going in the provinces than you have going in Paris. I've won listed races, Group 3s there, where you have about 20 people in attendance. If the owner is not there, they actually don't give you the prize. They actually walk away with the prize or the bottle of champagne. And I'm like, seriously? So they are 20 years behind on entertainment and looking after people. So, yeah, it's about time they do something about it.
Okay, so we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much, is what you're saying?
No, I don't think we should.
Okay. Now, Epsom Downs, or the Jockey Club, have announced this week that they've had a rethink about the Derby Festival rethink. So the rethink originally was that they were going to do something a little different, like have a card in the middle of the week and maybe have an Oaks Saturday and then a Derby Saturday, Melbourne Carnival style-y. And then Tom Sams, the guy who was the GM at the time, has gone back up to Manchester. And Nevin Truesdale was a kind of a supporter of the idea. He's gone now as well. So this has been put back in the chiller, and it's as you were. No obvious change. Could do with doing something, though, couldn't they, Jonathan?
No, I agree. I think Epsom is such an interesting case study because it's so unique. They hardly race, really. Obviously, the whole thing about the public space on the Downs, there's unique challenges to Epsom, and there is a sense that it is going to take some sort of radical thinking, potentially, just to lift it to where it ought to be. I think there's nothing wrong with the race. The Derby itself, it's just everything around it that they need to somehow build up to match that kind of grandeur. And I was not, in theory, against the idea of kind of spreading out the love a little bit more because it works in other countries. I can see you need to build the sense of occasion. For me, I would be looking at something like a Wimbledon, kind of engaging with the local area, trying to, even with that ticket idea, build a sense of this is the week, Derby week, and try and get some kind of sense of
thing going.
That this is an event, not just two fairly isolated race days, Friday, Saturday.
OK, so how do you build the Derby into an event in suburban outreaches beyond South London? No ideas, no, that's a no, that's a pass. He leaves his sheet blank.
No, to be fair, I mean, personally, it's one of my favourite meetings of the year.
And you love Epsom?
I love Epsom. The spectacle is amazing. You can see the race without the binoculars nearly, you know. And it's one of those special race courses full of history, and I just love the place. Look, I'm probably not smart enough to come up with anything.
I love the place too, but I wouldn't have. I don't know. There must smarter people than us.
I mean, because there's part of the look and feel of it. They cleared the hill out for a while, then they wanted to fill the hill up again. But having not been committed to filling the hill up, it was quite hard to bring them back.
I think we've got a new general manager now who's got kind of a track record. He's a pretty left field career as well, having
Jim Allen, having
trained a horse in the US on his own, and he's not afraid to bring ideas in as a racecourse executive. So I understand the logic of come in, experience everything this year, but then I would not be surprised if he pulls a few left field things, and fingers crossed they work.
Are they ready for my idea yet?
What's that?
I don't know. It got a
I've road tested it on a few people, and I've about one person has. I did wonder about I can feel anyone involved with the pattern will start throwing things, because you'd obviously have to do some fairly radical things. I did wonder about trying to hitch the Derby to Royal Ascot's wagon slightly and having Derby Day on the Saturday before Royal Ascot. And just make this a huge British, London-based festival of horse racing, where you draw the whole country's eyes to this sport for a week, and you have your most historic race to kick it off, and then that drives you into Royal Ascot.
Have we got enough horses to sustain that?
Well, I don't think we need any more races.
No,
and
but
clearly there's loads. Because
there's a lot of the races, the Coronation Cup,
there's loads of idiosyncrasies.
There's a lot of horses that we're going to run up Royal
There's
Ascot.
There's lots of things you'd have to do. You'd have to slightly. You'd have to do some GBH to the pattern.
But it's not just the pattern. I don't think
you'd probably have to either get rid of.
You don't have a big enough good horse population.
You'd either have to get rid of the Hardwick Stakes or the Coronation Cup, for example. And people, oh, God, you can't possibly do that. I did suggest this as one person, and they said, oh, I'm exhausted after 2 days of Royal Ascot. I can't possibly take 7 or 8 days of racing. I'm like, it's your horse racing. You're not down the mines. I mean, get a grip. They can do it in Melbourne. You can do Breeders' Cup week. We are pretty wet sometimes. I mean, I don't know. I just thought it would be how many times in a month can you ask the British public to go gangbusters about horse racing.
Yeah, no, I get that. But then you also have on the other side people saying, oh, we want to see our horses more, we want to see our heroes running in the big races and the yada, yada, yada.
I get it.
But you can't then expect them to turn up bang, bang.
But hardly anyone bowls up at Epsom and Ascot anyway, especially not when there's a 10-day gap between them.
Yeah, no, it's a short gap now, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. It was just a thought.
It was worth thinking about.
I know, there we are. Jim Allen, that's my thought for the day. I expect it to go no further than this room, to be honest. Those were this week's talking points.